This is a Behemoth wood splitter that I built. I just built it of scrap pieces that I found along the way, and part of my reason for building it was I needed something that was compact and practical but could still do large volumes for without taking up a huge amount of room. That was the hydraulic pump which I brought early in the piece to operate off a PTO on a tractor, and the plate that I made up to mount it to all the frame, the PTO shaft. That's a 3-point linkage setup which attaches to the tractor. It's built out of scrap metal, leftover veranda post, believe it or not. The pins and the attachments there, part of that was brand new steel because I had nothing in the scrap pile, which you can see all the 3-point linkage frames starting to come together there, and the I-beam sitting in the background, which would eventually form part of the main splitter. But there I took the first cut out of the I-beam to mount the base plate for the cutting wedges. It had to have a slight drop in gradient, and I was welding the base plate for the PTO and the gearbox mount. They are the cutting wedges that all marked out, ready to cut out. And they all had special angles that they had to, because the cutting end is a lot smaller than the outlet, to allow for expansion inside the wedges. But the top and bottom blade was already cut out there but not finished. There had to be more done to that. Bearing in mind I did all this with a 125 grinder, because I had no idea at this stage that they had the thinner discs for the 9-inch. They were all staggered there, setting them up at that point to make sure that the middle blade would put the first split before the wood even got the second. So setting them blades and the angles up it actually took a lot of time. And you even see there how they don't run parallel, and with good reason. If they ran parallel, you'd jam the wood up in the box section when it splits. They're all tacked on there, and that's nearly the bottom layer set. Right there I did that because people didn't believe me that there was expansion there, but there's 115 by 115 at the front and 145 by 145 at the back, I think, with the measurements on that. There's the next stage. At the first base plate had the design, and then the second one had the design cut into it. With them little wing pieces on the side aren't designed for splitting, but occasionally you're getting stringy wood and it doesn't separate, so that they don't actually split them side ones, so there's not really that much strength required. They're just there to cut the string, stop the pieces of wood coming out joined together. But that's a piece of bridging beam from a highway. So if you see that little 20-litre drum there, from time to time it gives you an idea of how big that bridging beam actually is. And the wheelie bin gives you an idea too of the size of the thing. That tank I had made because I can't weld to the degree that fella can, and I can't afford to have a leaking hydraulic tank. But there's a 20-litre drum to give you an idea of the capacity of that thing. You could put 3 of them across the blades and push 3 blocks of firewood out. That there I was lucky to come across is a Hitachi face shovel ram. It is roughly 160mm inside, I think, on the piston from memory, with 90mm pins. So plenty of strength there. It's rated to 5,500 psi and it's fully reconditioned there, and it's sitting on the I-beam ready to start doing calculations to figure out where the mounts would go and what would happen. There we strengthened up the back of the splitting wedges, and you also put the clean-up knives on top of the. That's just for cleaning up little bits left over. That's not designed for splitting. I had some old rollers I brought, and I initially intended to use them for the slide, but I'm operating on such fine tolerances that they just weren't acceptable. So I went and brought some brand new rollers and tapped and drilled some plate to weld into the frame. It just had to be 100% accurate. We're only running at a 2mm tolerance on the slide, so if it didn't work I was in a lot of trouble. But that little plate in the background, that's another scrap piece of steel with a 90mm hole nearly right through it. So they formed them holes formed part of the pinholes for the ram at a later date. There I'd actually sat the rollers in, but they hadn't actually been welded. And the slide was put on top just to gauge wherever they were dead level, because they had to run parallel to the I-beam. So all that had to be extremely accurate, otherwise you'd get jamming when it fired up on the I-beam, which luckily it didn't. Couldn't afford to have any twist with the welds that were running in there when I was doing it either, so that was very slow and painful. There I had the 90mm holes. I had to get them cut because I found out later that scrap metal was supposed to be mild steel, but it wasn't. It was hardened, and I couldn't do the holes in that, so I had to pay someone else to do them. And there I brought them back up. The holes had been done, and I still had to cut that 50mm plate for the ears with the 9-inch. The 9-inch unfortunately died during the process, and I had to buy another brand new 9-inch, so that wasn't much fun. But there the slide started. I think I cut them out, but I didn't finish it, and I couldn't, because I realised afterwards, in order to set the slide up, I had to set the back end up first, put the ears on the back of it. So I started cutting out the ears for the back there, as you can see, and I had to weld all that on the back end to get the slide right, which again was all done with a 9-inch grinder. A lot of work. Caught myself on fire a few times. That's it's all clamped into place to make sure it was going to fit, and then once we knew it would fit, we welded it in. But that particular point in time, starting to have an awful lot of trouble with the welder, and I should have known better. I should have just stopped and serviced it, but I didn't. I kept persevering, and I wished I had have gone over it, because it was welding like not very good at all. Ended up being a faulty earth lead, but you can see all the back end, the ears are all welded in there, and I'd started welding the ears in for the pusher plate, and I decided that I needed to get it out at that point, because it's getting close to the point where I could weld the 3-point linkage on and attach it to the tractor. I had put the 3-point linkage on the opposite side to start with, and I realised it wouldn't work. And the main reason was because the outlet's on the hydraulic tank. Once I put the hydraulic tank on, would not have would not have worked properly with the outlet on the hydraulic pump. So I ended up switching the 3-point linkage to the opposite side. It was a good thing I realised before I actually welded it on there. I'd started working on the slide there, which basically everything hinged on, and that had everything there was just super critical, just tolerances, absolutely everything. You just couldn't afford to have any twist. If the beam there were twisted, you're losing your ability to slide on that slide right there on the I-beam. There's another shot of the hydraulic pump. I was getting ready to set things there up, but there's another section of the slide, and believe it or not, that hole was cut with a 125mm grinder. It took an awful lot of work, and then I spot welded it because it was pretty ugly, and then kept regrinding it until I got it absolutely perfect. But that was over a 90mm hole, and I had to have that bigger so I could get the pin through for the ram. That was the whole idea. But I started welding that up, and I kept running the fillets for the weld there and gradually trying not to get heat in it because all that was critical. And I got to a point where I decided that I had enough strength in it. I couldn't keep running the welds because the metal was starting to flex. So we got to a point there where them fillets, where the rails are welded on, I decided to stop. It just wasn't worth it. It didn't really need to have any holding strength because it was only sitting on top of the rails anyway. But everything there was getting ready to weld all that roller set up completely together, which would lock all the slide on the I-beam. But that slide is very heavy. I can easily lift over 100 kilos, and I could not lift that. The hydraulic pump, we'd sat it in there at that point we decided where the 3-point linkage was going, and we'd sat everything in there to make sure the slide wasn't going to hit it. We put a welding glove over the ram chrome vadium on the ram to stop any splatter getting on the chrome vadium and wrecking either the seals for the ram or the chrome, I should say the chrome molly off the ram. But I'd got it to the point there where it could go on the tractor, and I was a bit worried the tractor wouldn't lift it, but the tractor was fine. Didn't even worry the tractor, and we still had 200 litres of oil to go on an oil tank that was to go on it, so I still wasn't convinced that the tractor would handle it, but at that point it kind of didn't hesitate to lift it up on the 3-point linkage, which it had me worried. We still hadn't finished any of the pins there either, but it really wasn't that far off being finished. We started doing all the platform for where the wood rails in there, and just doing a lot of tidy up work, getting it ready. The tank was welded on, I think, at that point, and was made ready. It started, I think, getting ready to clean it all up there, but the pusher plate, I had to cut the corners off that, which made it look a lot neater, but there she is, all painted and finished. And had to bolt the rollers back in after she was painted. Put the pump on, she was all fixed. And the only thing left was the ram there, and there it is with the ram in it, ready to go off to Hydrocrip to get all the hydraulics fitted. Put that Behemoth sticker on it, but I wasn't happy with it because it hadn't stuck properly. There it is finished and ready to go. Lifted off took it up the wood and ran a heat through it, which is absolutely super impressed with it, and that was the old splitter sitting there beside it. But there's 30 minutes work there, and the 3120 sitting on top.